Good afternoon, everybody. Tonight I am making a Mexican lasagna. Now, it's not a hard recipe. It does call for more ingredients than some of my other meals. But what you're going to get is you're going to have about a pound and a half of hamburger meat. You're going to need some black beans. You're going to need some refried beans. You're going to need some diced tomatoes. You can use Rotel. You can use the Mexican dice, just some diced tomatoes. I like to add different cheeses. I've got some taco here, some Mexican, some chopped cheddar, and you're going to need some taco seasoning. You're going to need onion or a seasoning blend. This is just something I use because it's quick. You're going to need some salsa. I'm going to use, seasoning-wise, again, the onions, salt, pepper, my mixed up salts, some chili powder, and, of course, my taco seasoning pack. For topping, I'm going to top it with some lettuce and tomato and some jalapenos when it's all done. You're going to need some tortillas, some soft tortillas. I went to the store to get these, and all they had left was these little small ones. Normally, I would get the bigger ones, but the small ones, it doesn't really matter as long as they're the tortilla shells. But tortillas, sorry. I'm going to get the hamburger meat started. I'm going to brown my hamburger meat with my onions and my salt and peppers, and then once it's brown, I'm going to put my taco seasoning, my salsa in there, and we'll go from there. Okay, just because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be asked on amounts of stuff, what I usually do when I cook, I don't measure things per se, but I would say put an onion, maybe some bell pepper. You don't have to use the blend. You can just use onion if you want. As far as salt, pepper, things like that, I just usually just go right across the top. Put my salt, put my pepper. If you've watched me for a while, this is literally what I do every time. But just in case this is the first time you're seeing me, I'm going to go ahead and do it real quick. And like I said, you just kind of sprinkle everything over the top. And I know I'm putting taco seasoning in here, but I'm using 1 pack of taco seasoning, and this is probably a pound and a half of meat. So I'm going to go ahead and throw some chili powder in here just to kind of like kick up the flavor some. So I'm going to do this real quick. I'm going to get all this browned together, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, so my meat has been browned with the onions and the seasoning, so I'm going to go ahead and add my taco seasoning mix. You just add it in there, and you put in about 3/4, or a little over half a cup of water. You're going to stir that up. And you don't want it to be too watery. Something else I didn't think to mention, I did put salt and stuff in here because I am using over a pound of meat. But if you're just going to use right at a pound of meat, the taco seasoning mix is pretty salty, actually. So don't use as much salt. I mean, you're still probably going to need a little salt because layering this, you're going to need to make sure all the flavors are good and strong. So I'm going to cover this. I'm going to turn this down to medium-low, and we're going to let this just simmer. And while that's simmering, what we're going to do is we're going to start on the different layers. So besides your taco meat, you're going to have a layer of refried beans. Now, the refried beans are already cooked, so those are going to be a layer on the bottom, so I'm not really going to do anything with those. But you're also going to have a layer of your diced tomatoes and black beans. So what I like to do is I like to take a little bit of olive oil and put it in the bottom of the pan. That's a little bit too much. I'm going to pour some of that back out. 1 second. So yeah, you just want enough oil to literally just cover the bottom. And I'm going to put my tomatoes in there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn this up to high. And I'm going to kind of cook these tomatoes a little bit, and then I'm going to pour the black beans in, and then I'm going to just let it simmer. So let me get this fried up a little bit while that's simmering, and then we'll work out our layers. Okay, so this has been cooking down for probably about 8-9 minutes. And you just want to cook it down to where the juice is gone. I did drain the juice, but this kind of gets all the rest of that juice out and leaves it more back to your tomatoes. Usually I use the larger diced tomatoes. This was a can of petite, so they kind of broke down a little bit more than I would prefer. But as you can see, I kind of cooked out all the juice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit garlic powder to this. And then I'm going to add my beans. Now the beans you also, you rinsed and you drained and rinsed. So you're not going to have, you shouldn't have a whole lot of liquid with these either. Now, of course, you're not going to get all the juice out, but all right. And then I'm going to let this, again, I'm going to let this simmer for about 10 minutes. I'm going to cover it up, and I'm going to let this simmer together. Get those flavors to marry. And then, and here I forgot to add my pecani sauce or salsa, whichever you have on hand. I just put almost probably about a half a cup. Again, this is just to add more flavor. You know, I like my food to have a whole lot of flavor, and so this is just kind of adds to it. Now, of course, you're going to taste it at this stage and see if it needs anything else, any salt, any pepper. I'll taste this right before I start my layers, okay? Okay, so I've got my meat done. I've got my beans and tomatoes married together, so the flavor's nice. It's got a little sweetness to it. I've got my refried beans. I've got my cheese mix. The cheese mix, I put 2 packages of Mexican blend cheese and a sharp cheddar. So all you're going to do is you're going to just grease the bottom. If you've got some cooking spray, just use that. If not, you could take a little bit of Crisco, whichever. And then you're going to layer on the bottom. Again, normally I would have a bigger, the bigger tortillas, but since I don't, I'm going to kind of just layer these over each other. You want to make sure that it's, you know, everything is covered. You don't want gaps, so it's better to overlap than it is not to have, you know, what you need. So, all right. That looks like everything's good and covered. So you're going to start with your refried beans. You're going to smear this on. I'm going to get this kind of layered up because I can't hold the phone and do this at the same time. Okay, so I did a thin layer of the refried beans. I put a thin layer of the meat, and then I kind of just sprinkled around my beans and tomato mixture. And then I'm going to really, really, really coat this with cheese. Don't be sparse on the cheese because this is, you know, this is really a cheesy meal, just like when you make any kind of lasagna. So you want to make this really cheesy. And then you're going to do another layer of your tortillas, meat, and cheese. And then we're going to pop this in the oven. Okay, so this is how it's going to look. This is 2 layers. It's going to go in the oven like this at 350 for about 30 minutes or until all the cheese is melted. I'll show you once I pull it out, and I'll plate it up with the lettuce and tomato and all that fun stuff. Okay, so I didn't realize how late this was running, but here it is, just came out the oven. And what I do is add a little bit of lettuce, a little bit of tomato, okay, and then I put some of this cheese sauce. Now, you don't have to put the cheese sauce if you don't have it. I just happen to have some of the nacho cheese, and then I'm going to put a few little peppers on it, and then we're going to put a little bit of this Taco Bell sauce. And there you go. Again, you can do this. You don't have to put the extra cheese. You don't have to do the lettuce and tomato. You can use some sour cream. With the tomato mixture and the beans, you can put some corn. You just pretty much do this any way that's to your flavor, the things you like. But again, it makes a nice big tray. This is what it looks like in the pan when it first comes out. Of course, it's still really hot. So normally I let it sit probably about 5 minutes to let everything kind of cool down a little bit. But this is what it's going to look like when it's done. So if y'all have any questions, let me know. If not, enjoy, y'all.